Hi, this is John Rowell for the Rowell Report. The question is, what is going on in Mexico? We just had President Trump kidnap the president of Venezuela, take him to the United States, put him in a jail, put him in, some orange suit, and now President Trump is threatening to invade Mexico, and we have from the president of Mexico giving a speech basically, let's be friends and let's work together. So, unfortunately, Mexico is tied very closely with the United States, but this also can work in the Mexican favor because there are a lot of U.S. factories located in Mexico and they could be nationalized. The Mexican president could close the border, stop all flights back and forth, remove her ambassador, and then throw out all the U.S. government personnel that are spread throughout the country of Mexico, whether it's the diplomatic personnel, the FBI, military trainers, you name it. They're probably there in Mexico. In fact, the DEA used to have a very strong presence in Mexico even before it was called the DEA. I believe they were very active in the late 60s. And so after President Nixon declared the war on drugs, the U.S. and Mexico have basically survived in their relationship despite, basically everything coming from Mexico into the United States. So this is possibly a face-saving measure on for President Donald Trump because he has guaranteed to us that the U.S. border is secure, that it is 100% secure. So then how are all the drugs getting into the United States? So that is the big question. And President Trump said, of course, they're coming on the waters. They're coming from Venezuela in little teeny tiny boats with backpacks. And the U.S. public ate it up, with all the tons and tons and tons and variety of illegal drugs that are flooding into the United States. They're all coming on these tiny little boats with a couple of motors and I don't know, 50, 60 or 100 gallons of gas that'll get them, basically to the next island in the Caribbean. And they probably have to go past 30 or 40. So the U.S. public ate up that story, even though it had made no sense at all. And even called these people who are, fishermen and moving merchandise between one island and the other narco-terrorists. And people bought it completely, 100%. But now that we're turning the attention towards Mexico, this is starting to look a little odd because the United States and Mexico are tied very closely together. And I understand that Mexico and the United States have been through a lot of ups and a lot of downs and a lot of back steps and a lot of forward progress. Claudia Sheinbaum seems to be with the let's be friends and let's work together speech that she has carried on for a very long time. But the writing is on the wall. The President Trump is now threatening Mexico with attacks, with invasion. And so you would think that the president of Mexico would take some form of diplomatic action just to start off in order to push back. And like I mentioned, there are a lot of options that she can take to push back very strongly on the Trump administration. And if she continues to give the speeches of let's be friends and let's work together, there may be surprises happening in the middle of the night somewhere in the Mexican territory, and that would be quite unfortunate to have our relationship with Mexico to go downhill so quickly. But again, I'm wondering, what is the thinking of the Mexican president to be so passive and submissive in this moment, after seeing very clearly what happened to President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela, and the fact that the Trump administration has said the chains are off. We are locked and loaded. We're ready to go. We can threaten anyone, anytime, for any reason, and do anything. And we're the big dog on the planet. Not only that, we're the people in charge of this, of the Americas, from the north to the south. And we will decide who's legitimate, who's not, and what we can carry out when. So you would think that she would be pushing back a little bit more. Possibly this will go in stages, but for the moment, doing the let's be friends and let's work together speech isn't going to work for Mexico, especially if she wants to avoid any kind of U.S. invasion and attacks on Mexican territory. And just a reminder, the drug war has been carried out in Mexico since the 60s, and then there was officially declared the war on drugs by President Nixon in 1973. And you know how successful we have been in this war. So we have not been successful at all, and the situation only gets worse, hasn't gotten any better. And so the solution for the Trump administration was to double down on the same strategy that has been carried out even before the Nixon administration, thinking that because he does it faster, stronger, with more personality involved, with the President Trump leading the charge with his boisterous voice, somehow that's going to change this strategy from failure to success. I really doubt it. If they need to learn one thing from the war on drugs, it is that the strategy that they've used since the 60s and officially declared in 1973 has been useless and will continue to be useless, because it's focused on removing the capo, or the head, the jefe of the group, and they basically leave the group intact. And so this group then, they have a small turf war, and so they split off into 2 or 3 groups. So instead of stopping one group, now you're trying to stop 3, then you're trying to stop 6, then you're trying to stop 10. And so as you can see, it is a strategy that is designed to fail and to continue to pump money in, with no accountability for all these drug operations. And finally, what we saw in the Venezuela invasion and the kidnapping of President Nicolas Maduro is that most of this, in front of the cameras, was being handled by the DEA. So the DEA is basically the U.S. hit squad in Latin America, where they take out any part of the narco squad. They take out anyone who stands in their way. So the DEA is showing that it's really part of regime change operations and control operations by the U.S. government in Latin America. So that is quite clear. And so why would Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum continue to allow the DEA to move freely in Mexico? And of course, there should be a plethora of NGOs and various organizations in Mexico, which basically answer to the Pentagon or to the president, and don't work on behalf of the Mexican people. So why no one there has acted is beyond me. But anyway, we are looking at a situation where President Trump has threatened Mexico, and President Claudia Sheinbaum has replied somewhat strongly, but her response should be diplomatic. Start, nationalizing U.S. companies. If you're gonna really send a strong message, you could close diplomatic missions of the United States in Mexico, and you could close Mexican missions in the United States. So what happens when Mexico closes the border and shuts down U.S. companies that are operating in Mexico, whether it's the car manufacturers, whether it's the technology companies, etc. So I don't know if the Trump administration has thought very far down the line of this. Mexico has more, U.S. has more to lose than Mexico does. And there's really very little the U.S. can gain by just invading Mexico and start blowing up the leaders of the Mexican cartels. Because as I say, a new one, an old Mexican cartel that's blown up, leaves a bunch of pieces, and those pieces then form their own cartel. And this is the failed strategy of even before the Nixon administration. So I think Mexico needs to act strongly, and if they don't, they will definitely leave themselves open to attack. So we will see what happens in this situation. I'm very interested in this Mexico-U.S. bust up, and we will see where it goes. So thank you for joining me for this video. If you have any comments, please leave it below. I think people who have been to Mexico, many people have had negative experiences. So, people come from all sorts of points of view, and there's not necessarily a right perspective and a wrong perspective. I think that Mexico will always be Mexico, and it'll always be there, and it'll always be on our border, and the U.S. will always be on the Mexican border. So a solution will eventually happen, but for the moment, the Trump administration is completely without the guidance of international law, and without the constraints of Congress. So we will see where this goes. So thanks for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, share, and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you back for future videos. Take care. Bye-bye.